Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae. After an emotional first day of testimony yesterday that prompted tears even from the jury box, those jurors returned to the courthouse in McKinney, Texas today for more testimony in the track meet stabbing trial of Karmelo Anthony. Thanks so much for being with us as we follow day 2 today. We understand that the court is breaking for their lunch. That happened a short time ago. That means our eyes and ears in the courtroom, Cody Thomas, he is going to be able at some point to be able to join us from outside of the courthouse. But he's been keeping us updated on everything that's unfolding in this camera-less trial. Let's go to the report that Cody logged for us on what he's been observing.
Good afternoon. Yeah, day 2 off to a emotional start this morning. We had a first responder as the first witness on the stand, 3 witnesses so far, first responder and 2 officers. The first responder was a firefighter and paramedic that pretty much testified to the severity of the wounds once he arrived to Austin Metcalf's body, and just talked about the intense life-saving efforts they went through trying to revive him, to which, of course, to no avail. But they talked about, attaching a machine to his chest to read a pulse, and he had no pulse. They said it was flatline. There was an acronym he used, a medical term, and the prosecutor asked for, simplicity for the lay people in the gallery, and he just said, yeah, he had no pulse. He was pretty much dead in a cardiac sense. They loaded him up into the back of the ambulance, to which, he eventually did not regain consciousness. But then we went on to see more from officers, and they were testifying about their response to the situation that day. One was a school resource officer. He was actually the one that made contact with Karmelo Anthony and the one who detained him. But he talked about the commotion when he ran out there to the scene, all the kids running to him saying, someone's been stabbed, and they pointed towards Karmelo's direction. And so you see on the body cam when he finally approaches Karmelo, and Karmelo seemed to cooperate. He was being very cooperative. He was being compliant. He didn't try to run away. But the key thing about this testimony here on the body cam, you hear Karmelo say to the officer, he put his hands on me, I told him not to. And when he says that phrase, he clearly he's crying hysterically. You can hear him sobbing in a very emotional state, but the prosecution's harping on that last half of that statement, the I told him not to part, because the prosecution says that's simply a lie. We know we've heard that phrasing, he told him not to put his hands on me, or put your hands on me and see what happens. That's the narrative that the prosecution's running with, and that eventually led Karmelo to stab Austin Metcalf. But there was another officer whose body cam was played during this officer's testimony, where you heard the officer say, we have the alleged suspect, and then you clearly hear Karmelo say out loud, I'm not alleged, I did it. So kind of damaging to the defense's case here. But then we just heard from an officer who arrived who did not partake in any life-saving efforts for Austin Metcalf's body, more of scene patrol, scene security is what he was saying, and evidence control. He was the one securing off the scene there, and he actually showed, or we saw pictures of the knife. It was a 5-inch blade. The first time the jury actually saw that knife in person, they did a demonstrative effort in front of this jury where they showed that the blade could be swung out really quick with just the stroke of a thumb. You could open it really quickly with one hand. But the impactful part of that testimony is that we saw the body cam from this officer, where you actually see Austin Metcalf's pretty much a lifeless body, everyone trying to give him chest compressions, but you see the body on screen, and that obviously brought out a visceral, emotional reaction from the Metcalf family. Plenty of tears and sobbing and consoling. And I looked towards Karmelo Anthony's side, and it was pretty stoic. There was a pretty, a lack of emotion there, not necessarily in a negative sense, but just really take evidence here, all the facts of this case as the prosecution presents it thus far. That's the latest right now. I'll send it back to you.
Thanks to Cody Thomas for that report there in McKinney, Texas. Let's bring in our guests who are standing by to talk about this evidence, this new evidence that the jury has seen inside of that courtroom. We have with us trial attorneys Lateef Gray and Al Wunsch III. Thank you both for being here to talk about this case that has so many people talking online. They are paying attention to the details, even though we don't have cameras inside, but the details that are coming out, everyone has an opinion on them, and I'm glad I can get your legal expertise on these. Al, let me start with you. The jury seeing the knife for the first time today. How important is the weapon, the size of the weapon? Does it matter, especially when this is a knife that obviously was able to kill someone?
No, I mean, it's always a key part of any prosecution case to have the weapon. So when you have the weapon there and you can show that, and it dispels any, false rumors that were that it was a steak or something that was used for the sporting event that was going on. This is a knife. This is a knife that is a dangerous knife, and this is a knife that should not have been at a sporting event for a high school team. Perfect. Right there.
Gray, weigh in as well about that knife. What did you think about hearing that it's a 5-inch blade, that it was folded out at the point that the officers were able to preserve it? Talk about that part of it and whether or not that makes a difference when it comes to this case being self-defense or murder.
Well, I think it does make a difference in the fact that you have a 5-inch switchblade. This is not what we would consider a utility knife, which a lot of people keep with them, that has a little blade, a bottle opener, things like that. So the big question is, what was this young man doing at this track event with this type of knife that it seems like he brought it maybe for his particular purpose? So that's the big question as to what he was doing with this type of knife, which is not what we usually see people walk around with on a daily basis.
Yeah, we keep hearing that question. Why did he have the knife? Now, there was something that came out today, Al, where on cross-examination, one of the witnesses did confirm that having the knife is not a crime, but they don't mean at the school, obviously, because there is a specific rule for that school ground. Can you help people understand the difference and whether or not those school regulations matter in a court of law, in a murder trial?
Well, I mean, it is something that no weapons are supposed to be brought into the schools. Schools have a zero tolerance of any type of, they have a zero tolerance for having a pretend gun. You can't even bring a water pistol in some instances if it looks like a real weapon. So that is a zero tolerance policy. Okay, having the possession of the knife is not a criminal offense in and of itself. That's correct, okay? But it's a school event. He's a student, he's there, he's got a knife, 5-inch switchblade, which, I mean, you know, we all agree is not the type of thing you would need under any circumstances at a sporting event. And he used the knife. So, you know, whether or not it's legal to have it, it doesn't matter, okay? It shouldn't have been there, and it shouldn't have been used, and it shouldn't have taken the life of that, you know, poor 17-year-old kid.
Oh, yeah. This question of whether or not you're allowed to have it and whether or not that matters in a criminal trial reminds me of a case that I was inside of the courtroom for in Florida against Curtis Reeves, who was a retired police officer at a movie theater. There were signs on the movie theater doors that said, "This is a no weapon zone." He had his weapon. He fired it in self-defense. A jury did acquit him of murder and killed another man who only had popcorn in his hand. But it did come up inside of the courtroom as to whether or not he saw the signs, whether he knew he should have it, or as a retired officer, is he allowed to carry the gun all the time? Lateef, is that, in your opinion, going to be weighing on the minds of the jury about where should this knife have been? Where was it permitted to have been? Or again, does it matter at all because this knife was used in a way that killed someone?
Well, I will say
I'm
this.
sure that's something that...
All right, let me let Lateef weigh in, Al, and then I'll let you react to it.
All right.
I'm sure that's something that the jury will consider, but I think we all know law trumps policy. So if it's not against the law, like I said, it's something that the jury will consider, but I don't think that will carry the day for either side at the end of the day.
Al, what do you think? Law trumps policy?
Yeah, law does trump policy, except that, you know, and let's keep this in mind. This isn't Florida. Okay, that was the most ridiculous verdict I've ever heard in my life that happened with regards to a guy who throws a couple of, you know, assault and buttery, I called it, and he ends up losing his life in a movie theater. All right, this is Texas. I am confident that they're going to be a lot smarter jury, and they're going to be looking at it facts-wise as to what was going on, as opposed to some ridiculous verdict out of Florida.
Let's look at what the school resource officer on the stand today. This was, of course, a big moment. This is someone who would have arrived right after. And here are some of Cody Thomas's notes from inside watching that testimony. This witness, Eduardo Cortez, he was a school resource officer. He described the arrest of Karmelo Anthony. He said an adult pointed out the suspect and said, "That's the guy. I called him towards me. I patted him down. I had him raise his arms and ordered him to walk with me along that fence line. He obeyed me. He didn't try to run away. way, I turned on my body-worn camera, had him place his hands behind his back, and had him detained. The thing that most shocked me was that a student brought a knife to a track meet, and this witness agrees that that alone was unprecedented. Then on cross-examination, this witness agrees that Karmelo Anthony was emotional, said the knife is under 5 inches, actually, not prohibited, it's not illegal, not a crime. So that's what I was mentioning there. This witness speaking about it that way. But that body camera footage, Lateef, it was played inside of the courtroom today. That is always really important for jurors to see as much as they can. And here, they get to see the body camera not of days later when police catch someone, but right after it happens, this school resource officer is on the scene.
Right, and the body-worn camera presumably captures some spontaneous statements, excited utterances made by Mr. Anthony in the moment of the event while it's still on his mind and heavy on his heart. So oftentimes these body-worn cameras, which capture the aftermath of the incident, are best evidence because they capture things that are said and things that are done before anybody has time to consult with an attorney and develop a defense to what the particular charges are.
Al, what do you think about the weight of that body camera? Because I do want to add some of the notes that we're getting from the courtroom that you can hear on it, a handful of crying students. One child yells out, "That's my best friend, that's my brother," while crying and trying to come at Karmelo Anthony is our understanding of that moment. I mean, there's so much sobbing when it comes to these children and the trauma that they're going through, and you're also hearing that sobbing in the courtroom. And this is something that is very compelling evidence, I would think, for these jurors.
Absolutely, but you know what I didn't hear? They were trying to kill me. I was feared for my life. I had nothing I could do. I had to do this to be able to get out of there because they were going to take my life. They were going to kill me. They were going to beat me to a pulp. I didn't hear any of that. So the self-defense argument starts to kind of fade a little, because that's at the moment when he's confronted by this officer and has the chance to say, listen, I did this because I had to. If I didn't, I would not have been able to get out of that tent. They were trying to beat me up. They were trying to do something to me. They were trying to kill me. You don't hear that. So I think that's going to be very important with regards to the prosecution's case. And of course, you hear those other cries going in the background. I mean, that's just an emotional aspect of it. That just shows you just how horrific this crime is.
Yeah.
It's a terrible thing. And I mean, I feel terrible for both individuals, honestly. I hate to see that this Mr. Anthony has ruined his life with this ridiculousness of bringing on a knife to a track meet and going into the opposite field, the opposing team's, domain. And why?